What happens when you Beatle-ify a song? And by that, I don't mean singing it in a 1960s Scouse accent, going ooh, or any kind of impersonation of the Beatles. I'm talking about taking a really simple song, a 6-chord trick like almost everything in the charts today is, and then throwing the whole bag of Beatles songwriting tools and tricks at it, just to see what happens. Can a simple basic tune be turned into something musically inspiring just by combing through Beatles songs and literally cherry-picking 5 things we like the sound of and just slapping them in? That's the question we're going to attempt to answer today. Now, a lot of people talk in videos like this about music theory in a kind of detached way. I've done it myself. But today, we're going to actually apply these things to an actual song in actual real time, actually. We're going to take a short verse and chorus and physically do these techniques so you can see and hear them and copy them if you want to. And as usual, I'm going to really try and avoid complicated language and academic terms so that you hopefully don't get bogged down in musical jargon and bullshit. But that's not all. After transforming this tune using the Beatles' songwriting bag of tricks, I've actually decided to take things one step further. For many of their recordings, particularly in that first half of their career, the Beatles were very limited in what they could layer up in the studio. For many songs, they literally only had 4 tracks they could actually record on. Yes, they would sometimes bounce tracks and mix down, but in many cases, that limitation that was literally just imposed on them by their equipment meant that the main area in which they had scope to innovate, where there was space to apply production ideas, was literally just the notes themselves. For many of their recordings, they had no more than 4 tracks available, and that forced them to be creative musically. So, I've decided to limit myself in the exact same way. Once we've finished going through the process of Beatle-ifying a song, I'm going to record it using 4 tracks only, and, like the song yesterday, which only contains 4 tracks, I have to find ways to move and impress the listener with the note choices, harmonies and chord movements. Not with glittering production, millions of samples, 90 guitar overdubs and the London Symphony Orchestra. And after I've recorded it, just to ice the cake, I'm going to send it to Abbey Road to be mixed. After which you can hear the finished product, and I want to know whether or not you think we succeeded in creating something that maybe tapped into just a little of that Beatles songwriting magic. Perhaps unusually, some of my favourite compositions by the Beatles are actually some of those sentimental love songs from their first era. Stuff like Yesterday, If I Fell, Here, There and Everywhere, just because they were often so creative musically. So, in that same vein, here is a short little sentimental love song that we're going to be using today as our canvas, as the unwitting test subject in the Beatleification experiment. This is just a 45-second excerpt, just a verse and a chorus from a song called Be With Me.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home. You and I on a carpet ride, we'll fly through the northern lights. We could carry on high, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away free, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me.
Now that song is written how most pop songs are written today, using just 6 of the 7 basic chords that you find in every key. I have used them fairly creatively, but at core, that little song is really just pretty basic. The song is in E. There are actually 7 chords available in E, which you can see on screen right now. Be With Me uses 6 of them. Many Beatles songs, however, had incredibly complex chord sequences, so if we're going to attempt to elevate this song somewhere near their standard, we need to make the chords a little more grown up. So, the first Beatles song we're going to nick something from is probably the Beatles song that actually influenced this one the most, Yesterday. Yesterday is one of many Beatles songs which employs what I call subliminal key changes. Paul inserted a key change in this song that the untrained listener doesn't really notice, right in the middle of the very first line. He did a fairly common trick that I call the 2-5 turnaround. You remember that I said most pop songs today just use the same 6 or 7 basic chords from whatever key they're in? Well, here are the 7 basic chords in the key of E. Take a careful note of chords 2 and 5 because we're about to use them for the 2-5 turnaround. Paul played the song yesterday using G shapes on the guitar, and here are the 7 basic chords that you would find in that key. If Paul had written yesterday using only the basic 7 chords, these are the only ones he would have been able to use. The first chord is G, Paul is singing in G, but the very next thing you hear is the 2-5 turnaround going into E. Chord 2 and chord 5 from a different key, from the key of E. So yesterday opens with G, and it sings yesterday, so we're cleanly in G. But the very next 2 chords are F sharp minor and B. That's the 2-5 turnaround that should change key into E. As it happens, Paul brings us straight back into G by playing E minor. So you can see there, Paul has got what we could call 2 subliminal key changes, literally in just the first 4 bars of yesterday. I love the sound of switching between G and E. I think it's one of the most Beatle-y changes you can do. And so, switching between G and E is the first one that I'm going to apply to our song that we're working on today. So let's take another look at Be With Me.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home. You and I on a carpet ride will fly through the northern lights.
That's the original. What I want to do is insert a key change halfway through that verse and then come back to the original key. So for a little while I want to change out of E, where we start, into G, and then back again, Beatles style. So let's start by asking ourselves the right questions. If we want to go into G, what are the chords we use in that 2-5 turnaround? You can see the chords for G on screen now. Chords 2 and 5 are A minor and D. Now when I sing the first half of this verse, we end on a very useful note. Have a listen.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home.
That note, home, is a B. That note can work as our pivot point because B is both in the key we're in right now, E, and B is also in the key we want to go to, G. It's in both keys, so we can hold that note while the chords change underneath. So now, after that first half of the verse, I'm going to play A minor and D, and then pick up the chords as they would be in the new key. I will have to change the notes I sing a little bit once we shift into the new key, but hopefully I'll be able to find some that are in a similar pattern and still kind of work. So here we go, that verse with a key change to G in the middle.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home. You and I on a carpet ride.
I like that. However, to do a true subliminal key change in the style of the Beatles, we need to get back to our original key as well, fairly quickly. So, to keep it simple, I'm just going to use that exact same 2-5 turnaround to get us back into E. On screen now you can see the 7 basic chords in the key of E. So I'm going to take chord 2, F sharp minor, and chord 5, B, and see if it gets us back into our home key. Once again, I need to be singing notes that are in both keys for this to be kind to the ears. So where the lyrics go, we'll fly, I'm going to go, we'll fly, E and B, because those 2 notes are in both keys. Let's give it a go and see if it works.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home. You and I on a carpet ride will fly in the northern sky.
That is really different, but that's what I'm looking for. I want something that doesn't sound like everything else. I actually quite like that McCartney foray into G and then back again, so I'm going to keep that in. 1 Beatles trick down, 4 to go. Now we come on to the chorus, and over this section I want to cherry pick a different subliminal key change. And for this we're going to look at I'm Only Sleeping from Revolver. As I said earlier, we're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at this. We've included 2 key changes in the verse, now I want to include a different one in the chorus. In I'm Only Sleeping, when John Lennon sings "Keeping an eye on the world going by my window," we have this brilliant transition from the key of G or E minor to the key of C, also known as A minor.
I'm only sleeping. Keeping an eye on the world going by my window.
Lennon gets this brilliant exotic sound in exactly the same way we just looked at. He sings a note that's in both keys and then does the 2-5 turnaround. Now Lennon slightly changed the 2-5 turnaround by, instead of going chord 2, chord 5, he goes chord 2, then he plays a major chord 3. We're not going to do that in this video, we're just going to stick to the 2-5 turnaround. And let's apply the key change in the same place again, halfway through, this time the chorus. So here's the chorus without the key change.
We could carry on high, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away free, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me.
And now I'm going to do that Lennon key change. Halfway through, I'm going to go to B minor. So I'm going to take that minor shape and move it down 2 frets. And we're going to do the 2-5 into the key of A.
We could carry on high, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away free, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me.
So now we've got a new, different key change in the choruses, and that one works particularly well because I'm singing just 3 notes, C sharp, B and A, and all 3 notes are in both keys. So if you've noticed, the first key change worked just fine with a single pivot note, just a B that was in both keys. The second key change works great with just 2 notes that are in both keys, the E and the B. And this one works great with 3 notes, C sharp, B and A. If you can get a little melody that you sing over that change using notes that are in both keys, it really works. On now to the third Beatles song and the third songwriting technique. Next up, I wanted to include what I call a genre-swapped chord, which is where you take one of the basic 6 chords that would normally be major or minor and just flip it so it's the other one. The Beatles did this constantly, and one of their favourite chords to flip was chord 4. Chord 4 in G is a C. And what the Beatles would often do in whichever key is change that to a C minor. Here's a somewhat simplified example.
So hold me tight tonight, tonight. It's you.
So, as we are throwing everything at this song, I've decided to include one of those in the second chorus, which I've also decided to make a different key change. But you're going to have to wait for the big reveal to hear how that one sounds. But why have I chosen to do a different key change again on the second chorus? Shouldn't the choruses be the same? Isn't this all getting a little jumbled up, proggy and confusing? Maybe. But that's because the Beatles, especially in the second half of their careers, would often consciously avoid going verse, bridge, chorus, solo, double chorus, finish. They tried to change things up constantly, throwing in unexpected rearrangements to make their songs less predictable and more musically interesting. Which brings us very quickly onto Beatles song number 4, the Martha My Dear layout Jumble. It is a bit of an obscure one, but one of my favourite McCartney songs is a random album track from the White Album called Martha My Dear, which he wrote about his dog. And honestly, what an underrated tune this is. It's full of interesting key changes all over the place, but it also doesn't follow a predictable pattern. Instead, various sections are different lengths, in different keys, and they occur in an unexpected sequence. So I've decided to take this technique and apply it as the 4th Beatles technique, but just to the choruses of this song. I've not gone quite as extreme as the Beatles did on the White Album. This is not Happiness is a Warm Gun, it's a kind of sentimental love song. I want to keep the song relatively accessible, so I've kept the overall layout fairly predictable, but I decided to make chorus 1 just one line, chorus 2 4 repeats of the same line but in a different key, and chorus 3 one line again, but chorus 3 will be in a different time signature. And that brings us neatly on to the very last experimental Beatles edit, the Lucy in the Sky timing change. The Beatles didn't only change keys constantly within their songs, they didn't just genre swap chords and introduce chords from outside the basic 6 or 7. They didn't only mix up the order and arrangements of the sections of their songs, they also often introduced timing changes, frequently switching between 4/4 and 3/4. Probably most memorably in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where the verses are in counts of 3 and the choruses are in counts of 4. Now, once again, Be With Me is not meant to be some mad, drug-fueled psychedelic odyssey, so I've only applied that to the last section of the song. I've only changed the timing, changed the rhythm, right at the very end, where I am bringing this technique in, this different feel or time signature, just basically as the big crescendo. Now, I played around with this for a while and ended up settling on the rhythm from All My Loving, this switch to a kind of 12/8 feel. So we'd be switching from this, very laid back thing, to this. But the problem I had now was that could be incredibly jolting to just go from this gentle lilt into some kind of mad pirate jig. I realised at this point it would probably just sound absolutely mental if I didn't include some kind of signal ahead of time, some kind of warning as to the change that was just around the corner. So I decided that from the point of the final verse, which is just instrumental, I needed to start subtly signalling the upcoming timing change into a slightly more triplet feel via a few phrases on the lead guitar. I also chose to signal this a little bit in the backing vocals as well, so that when the music eventually all of a sudden switches into this fast 12/8 rhythm, the listener has actually already been warned subconsciously multiple times that this change is coming, so it doesn't sound too jarring or silly, I hope. And that's it for the 5 Beatles songwriting changes we are making to this song. So, having completed this new Beatle-ified version of the song, I then recorded it just here at home. I recorded an acoustic rhythm track just using my Loudon, and a lead vocal track using a Shure SM7B. But that was just 2 tracks, and under the terms of the Beatleification challenge, I still had another 2 available. This song was of course heavily influenced by the Beatles song Yesterday, so I had a listen to that to see how did they bring out the colours in this song. It's not just one guitar track and one vocal track. What did they do to embellish it, to produce it? Yesterday contains just 4 tracks. One is Paul's acoustic, 2 of them are Paul's vocal takes, which you can hear crossfading with one another at the end of the first chorus, around the 55-second mark. But the place where all the expression and variation comes from is the 4th track, George Martin's string section. And here I had to make a decision, because I don't have access to a string quartet. I could try and program something in MIDI, but that's not really my area. So I decided to just take the principles of George Martin's string part and apply them to my 2 remaining tracks, which I used for a lead guitar part and 1 backing vocal. These 2 tracks have been used to harmonise, embellish, fill gaps and create variation of colour and mood within the song. It took me 2 days to finish the recording, after which I sent the 4 tracks to Abbey Road to be mixed. And I now have it back, and I'm going to play it for you in full. And I'm going to put the notes on the screen as well, so you can see as well as hear what's going on in the Beatle-ified song. It's just 2 minutes and 40 seconds long, and I specifically asked the mixing engineer to do a kind of modern take on a Beatles sound. I really like what they've done with it. It's a really ballsy, gutsy mix, and they've got the backing vocals foregrounded in a kind of very, very confident way, just like the Beatles did back in the day. So here we go, the song Be With Me after Beatleification, mixed at Abbey Road.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'd like to take you home. You and I on a carpet ride, we'll fly in the northern sky. We could carry on high, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away free, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me. I don't know why, but I feel alive, and I've got to get you alone. Hands entwined, 20 miles high, we walk through the northern lights. We could carry on higher, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away free, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me. 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 We could carry on high, take a stroll on the balancing wire. We could fly away, though I don't believe in destiny. You were born to be with me.
Let me know down in the comments whether you think that's an improvement or whether you preferred the original, simpler version. YouTube does tend to kind of compress the sound a little bit as well, so I've also put the Abbey Road mix on Spotify if anyone wants to listen to it with a little more clarity and without any of the usual YouTube sound coloration. Throughout this video, I've anchored all these techniques in the Beatles, the key changes, the timing changes, the jumbling up of sections, all of that, but the truth is, all those techniques predate the Beatles by a very, very long way. It's my belief that they probably learned those techniques themselves from the classical masters, possibly via George Martin. But I hope that seeing how you actually do these things in practice has been helpful and inspires you to use some of these great time-honoured techniques in your songs. And that by learning from the masters, as the Beatles themselves did, some of your music in the future might capture people's hearts in exactly the same way. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.